Oh, what a day it has been. We have, as Channel Africa, been talking about this for quite a long time. We've brought you experts, we've brought you some of the facilitators to talk about what's next for Channel Africa. And today we really saw what is next. But not only that, we saw what is possible for us as a channel, what's possible for us as Africa. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the inaugural Africa Matters One Day Summit. It was held on this very day. The theme this year was financing Africa's recovery. It's just come to an end, and it was brought to you in partnership with Wits Business School, and there were a diversity of experts, policymakers, as well as researchers, all advocating for stronger, more innovative financing solutions in order to enable Africa to not only recover economically, but also to thrive amid the growing challenges that are posed by climate change. Honored this afternoon to have our very own business manager, Channel Africa's business manager, with us in the studio, Mr. Dicksy Ngqula. Good to have you with us, sir.
Hello.
And how quickly did you get here? Because we were at Wits Business School all of this morning, and I thought maybe you'd be joining us telephonically. No, but you thought you'll come here and be here with us. Why was this so important for you?
No, I thought, technology is good, and we appreciate it. But I also felt that it's important I come in person, and so that we can share, on the results of today without interruptions or disruptions. So I'm here and I'm ready to chat through it all.
Great. Well, let's get straight into it. As far as the objectives of what Africa Summit was supposed to achieve, maybe can you take us through that? And upon reflection of the conversations and the discussions that were had today, do you believe that those objectives were met?
I think so. I think you must remember that this was a foundation for us. The communique that was leaving our desks at all times going out to the world about this particular summit today was lamenting the issues around fragmented policy frameworks on the African continent. Secondly, the misconceptions around investment risks on our continent, which are things that we often have to dispel ourselves. And I think thirdly, it was important that we come out and really advocate for unity on this continent about how we approach matters that affect us. So we've spoken at length about, stats as to what it means to be the ones that are suffering the most out of climate change, and yet we are the least contributors, right? But I'm proud that the framing of conversation today wasn't all about complaining how we are treated by other regions, etc., etc. Of course, that's a fact, But the real objective of today was to say we're taking our own destiny into our own hands, and we must look at the instruments that we have where funding and financing is concerned and say, how can we calibrate those to ensure that we arrive at the table to speak value for value deals with international finance institutions, and I think that we achieved that. We set a bar very high in terms of the panels that were there, the insights that came out of these discussions today. I'm really, really proud on behalf of Channel Africa in particular, and in general the SABC.
And what would you highlight as some of the key outcomes that really stuck for you, and you thought, this is something that we can actually stand on as a pivot, a foundation that we can build on? Is there anything that really just stood out particularly for you?
I thought that I liked the fact that you guys as facilitators really pressed our panelists to not come and talk through old cliches, but to really come up with solutions. You had private banks there. There was a fair representation of policymakers. And all of these people really had clear views as to what should happen. And of course, in an environment like that, you are going to have diametrically opposed views from time to time. But the importance of having all of them in one room and then narrowing it down to solutions and steps we must take forward so that we can measure ourselves. For me, that was a highlight. The fact that WBS will record these and we will all have a space to go back to and say, these were the outcomes, and are we actually marching in step with those outcomes and the deliberations and the recommendations of those discussions? So that for me was important.
And I like the fact that you highlight the fact that there was some diametrically opposed views, because that's the nature of life. And all of those were represented there this afternoon. So some really robust, conversations were taking place. But also for me, what stood out is the opportunity that exists when we look at the illicit financial flows that actually leave the continent, but could then be reinvested back into climate change, for example, the trillions that are there when it comes to pension funds. But then you ask, do you want to use pension funds, for that type of development? Because that's, money of the vulnerable. So all of those really important debates were coming up. But what I really enjoyed is the fact that there was a feeling that it is possible and it can be done. And we didn't leave there defeated. A really, really strong platform for us to move from.
I was just going to add, Thami, that blended finance is exactly about that. That we've got to look at the issue of carbon credits. We've got to look at other solutions. How do DFIs, development financiers, in this continent of ours, must begin to play a developmental role and stop acting like commercial banks. That's one of the comments that actually came up. But we also experience it as businesses, that our DFIs, even the credit regimes, are very stringent. The risk assessments are not really in line with what DFIs should be doing. And I also want to say that for every proposition you're going to table for financing, there's always going to be a question of equity or owner contribution, etc. Those discussions came up. How do you say to people who've been oppressed for so long, have had to suffer the way that they have, that now they must arrive at the table with equity? Okay, our equity is that we're the youngest population on the continent, and we have rare earths, by the way, which everybody wants, and we should speak with one voice. I'm glad that the issue of unity came up here. We have to speak with one voice as the African continent, so that when we talk to other regions, Europe, the Americas, etc., at least our voice is louder, and we can hold on to the stuff that they know they want, and say no. If you want to come and play, you're going to play according to our own rules.
And that was so important. And at some point I felt that it was to be an overhaul. Because everything and the entire premise from which we move as a continent has been based on colonial rules. So how have those very same rules been applied to capital, and what there needs to change? Because the very foundation needs to change of how we relate to capital, and how capital is financed, and how we as Africans are part of that entire equation. So it really just leaves a lot to be discussed. So we've spoken about the report that's going to come out from Wits Business School.
Right.
Who do you intend to be the audience for that, and what do you hope that document will do?
So some of these, you would know this studying, right, that academic reports stay with institutions, but this institution agreed to partner with a public broadcaster, okay, and the main reason for us ensuring that we stream this, we take it out to the public, was to reach audiences far and wide. That's what these types of engagements are meant to do, Thami. It's to say, there's the four walls of the auditorium where the discussion is taking place. You plug in Channel Africa's ecosystem there. That conversation now can reach cities across the continent. But we must also be able to say, how do we talk to the media partners we have on the continent, to ensure that those public sector broadcasters take the message to the villages, and we think that using our communication platforms, that has a multiplier effect, and that's what we bring to the table.
I know we've just finished the very first one, but I'm going to ask you, when is the next one?
When is the next one?
Yes, and what are we talking about?
I don't know yet what we're talking about, but what I can say to you is that Africa Matters, the one that happened today, is a foundation for, it's always going to happen annually. We will do one or two a year, all right? And we haven't decided on the subject matter of the next one, but this particular one, because it's a child born today, right? And there are outcomes out of it. And that we need to go back to these discussions. That theme will proceed. So there will be multiple themes. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's a project that's going to give birth to multiple projects, all under the same Africa Matters umbrella.
I really like that, because that will already distinguish us from being a talk shop.
Yeah.
because the outcomes that come out from this particular summit will then inform where we're taking the discussion next. Are we going to let's elevate it, let's change gears? And so it's very robust and it's dynamic and it's living, just like us as Africa. Mr. Dicksy Ngqula, thank you so much for coming through, and you go home and you have yourself a good rest.
I'm going to sleep until April.
No, there's just a few more days left.
Yeah,
That's our business manager there, Mr. Dicksy Ngqula, the aftermath of a really successful Africa Summit.